Captain America Brave New World is the 36th entry in the MCU. It is directed by Julius Ona, and it stars Anthony Mackie as Falcon slash now the new Captain America, as he has fully stepped out of Steve Rogers' shadow and is becoming, is taking on the full responsibility of being the new Captain America. So, let's talk about the MCU for a little bit here. It has been in a state of flux for, I would say, ever since COVID hit. Obviously, we had no movies in 2020. 2021 was a bit of a rough year for them. Black Widow, not a lot of people loved it. I think it failed at the box office miserably. Shang-Chi was a bit of a uptick in quality, but then it all kind of came crashing back down in 2022. A lot of people have been just done with Marvel, and rightfully so. Their movies have been growing staler by the minute. I actually was somebody who really didn't hate Phase 5. I think it was either Phase 5 or 4. I really liked Multiverse of Madness. I thought that was one of the better MCU movies, period. I didn't mind Black Widow. I really liked Shang-Chi. I liked what they were doing, kind of, experimenting and moving forward and wanting to push the superhero genre into new boxes. But then you had stuff like Eternals and The Marvels and Ant-Man Quantumania and all of these kind of nothing fests that really never pushed the needle either way. They were very mediocre. They were very blah. And along with that and the influx of television shows that Marvel was producing, there was just too much Marvel content. We were all getting hit with this big wave of superhero fatigue, and they weren't doing much about it. Now, last year, they came to us with Deadpool and Wolverine, which, was very divisive. I still fall somewhere in the middle with that movie. It was a huge success, and even the year prior, they gave us their best movie to date with Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So things were looking up for a little bit. Again, people were still getting tired of the MCU. They really wanted something fresh, something different, and it felt like the studio was getting desperate. But now we're entering the calendar year of 2025, and we have a full slate of Marvel films kicking off with Brave New World. And I don't know how to put this any lightly. Brave New World was one of their biggest misses, I think, ever. I legitimately couldn't stand most of this movie. Now, I don't want to put that at all on somebody like Anthony Mackie. I like him as Falcon. I am one of the few people, it seems like, who actually enjoy seeing Falcon on screen. Now, I didn't really love Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I thought that show was pretty pointless and went nowhere fast. But I've really loved him in those, that role as Falcon, and I genuinely believed that he could vessel his own standalone movie. Not when it's written like this, however. Holy dear God, did they not do him any favors with this absolute dumpster fire. Dumpster fire. This movie is embarrassing to be released by a major studio. It reaches Morbius levels of terrible. It reaches Madam Web levels of bad in certain places. It's not as bad as that movie, but it gets there. And oh my God, was it painful to sit through the car crash. I want to talk about three main points here, as I think they are the contributing factors into why Brave New World really, really misses the mark. First of all, the pacing and the editing. Right away, it feels off. From the opening minute, this movie is not edited how most studio films are edited. It has this frenetic pace that is jumping all over the place like a kid with ADHD, and it never slows down. It never lets you kind of soak in what's happening. It just wants to go from sequence to sequence to sequence to sequence, never ever giving any room for you to breathe, and not in a good way at all. It is not in a way of like Mad Max Fury Road, where that movie kind of builds tension as it goes forward, but also never lets off that gas. This movie is just so scatterbrained and so all over the place with its editing that I genuinely felt nauseous most of the time. Another really key point here is the performances. I couldn't really get into Anthony Mackie as a starring role here. He was fine. He was okay for what he was given with. Honestly, I think that most other actors in his position would have given a worse performance. However, I never found his character or his performance engaging, especially because his supporting cast was just it ranged from boring to laughably terrible. His co-star playing kind of the new Falcon role was so whatever and so cookie cutter. Like it felt like he was acting in a commercial or like a CW show. Harrison Ford, good God, was he terrible in this movie? He was barely getting through his lines. He was it really it sucks because we just saw him in something like The Golden Circle, which not a good movie, I should say. I did recently revisit that. Really didn't like it. However, his performance as Indiana Jones was great. He really, it didn't feel like he ever missed a beat. But with this movie, it really shows his age. It really shows how much he was struggling to hold his own here. And I really could never get into his character. I thought his performance ranged from, you know, old man kind of stumbling through his lines to like laughably ridiculous in certain places. Giancarlo Esposito was in this movie, and he's just kind of doing his normal thing. I'm getting a little sick of his shtick, if I'm being honest. I love him. I think he is one of our best antagonistic actors out there, but they need to stop pigeonholing him in these kinds of roles. We've seen him do this across television, film, and video games at this point, and it's not working anymore. I think he needs to change it up a little bit. There's a surprise performance in this movie that I don't want to give away from an actor who was in a previous MCU movie, an MCU movie that no one cares about and is actively being willed out of existence by most fans. That is so enragingly bad and is so out of left field and cartoonish, even for a Marvel movie, that I couldn't help but laugh. I could not help but laugh at this man who we have seen give great performances in so many other movies. I again, not really on him, I would say. It's most certainly something I'm going to get into later, but my God, was I couldn't help but hysterically laugh every single time he was on the screen. And my final big knock against this movie is its waste of potential. Getting, the MCU back on track was something that it was going to be hard, because I'm not somebody who's expecting absolute cinema from the Marvel movies. I never have. When we get it, it's great. Guardians 3, Shang-Chi, the Endgame and Infinity War, those are legitimately really good movies that I would put up there with, like, I would consider them not just good for Marvel movies, but really good comic book films that can stand the test of time. I'm not saying that every Marvel movie needs to get there. It really doesn't. But it needs to have a certain level of standards. And this movie could have had that. Okay? We had the promise of Red Hulk. Cool, that's a new, interesting idea. Throw that in there. I don't mind that at all. And this movie being like a political spy thriller almost, akin to something like The Winter Soldier. Another movie that holds up very well to scrutiny. Taking from that well was not a bad idea. It works with the Captain America character really well. I don't even mind them retreading old stuff. But my God, was this such a slapdash and not well thought out effort. It's mesmerizing that a movie with this much money behind it, one, looks this unfinished. The CGI was god awful, but is this unfinished in the script department, in the storytelling department? It's so it almost feels like a 12-year-old wrote this. Like, this is something that I would see from a 12-year-old in like 2010 with a Nerf gun video. That is what this movie reminds me of, with the grown-worthy twists and turns, quote unquote. The villain reveal that was so asinine and so misguided. I just struggle to really find any light at the end of this tunnel, if I'm being honest. I was honestly excited for Fantastic Four. Still kind of am. That trailer looked really good. I was excited for the other one that I can't think of for some reason. Thunderbolts. I was excited for that movie. Now I'm really not. This, I just am so done with getting a little bit excited for these movies, wanting to turn my brain off, but just not being able to, and really struggling to find anything positive to say. Brave New World is a major disappointment. I think it's already flopping at the box office. It Marvel needs to really hit it out of the park with these next two releases. We need to get something new and exciting out of Thunderbolts, and we need Fantastic Four to really stick the landing and be the movie that it has the potential to be. Or I don't think I will be going to the movie theaters to see MCU movies anymore. I nearly skipped out on this one, but thanks to Roy, who ended up taking us. That was very nice of him. Thank you so much for that. But I am beyond frustrated with these movies. Brave New World is going to get a 1 out of 5, and that is being generous. That is being very generous. It is definitely going to go down as one of the worst movies of the year, if not the worst. I am fed up with this shit. So that is my review for Brave New World. Thank you guys so much for watching and being patient with the year-end stuff. Other than that, I don't really have any new updates, but I will see you with the next video. Thank you so much for watching.